The number who are deafblind with an otherwise intact brain, that's
Shut
a
up.
fraction
Shut up.
of an
Pause.
already...
Oh my God. What the hell? What the hell? The language, an otherwise intact brain, is actually one of the most volatile, despicable, disgusting phrases I have ever heard when it comes to talking about people with multiple disabilities or cognitive delays. That is actually shocking. Their brain being otherwise intact. Ew. Like literally ew. The ableism is dripping. I can't stand it. Play. Thank you to Squarespace for sponsoring this video. You can use code Molly Burke for 10% off your purchase of a website or domain name. Oof, I am about to willingly rage bait myself, and I truly don't know if I am mentally ready for what I am about to watch. Okay, so there has been a rumor, a conspiracy theory, if you will, circulating the internet for a very long time now, far too long, if you ask me, that basically is Helen Keller's a lie. Helen Keller's fake, wasn't real, didn't exist, what have you. People don't believe that somebody could be deafblind and accomplish everything that Helen Keller did. And as a blind woman who has known many deafblind people over the years, who recently was fortunate enough to become friends with Haben Girma, who is what many consider the modern day Helen Keller, this infuriates me. I am so irritated. And this video popped on my TikTok feed the other day. And it was clearly like a cut down from a longer video discussing this exact topic, basically debunking Helen Keller as a person. I was enraged by the little snippet I got. I immediately went to the comment section. And what's interesting about platforms like TikTok is they show different comments to different people. So when I sent it to my fiance and he opened the comments, the first comment was like leaning all the way into this being a conspiracy theory. But when I opened the comment section, the first comment I got was at Molly Burke Official. So I was like, say no more. I've been summoned by one singular person and that is enough for me. So I found the longer video on YouTube. I have not seen the whole thing. My fiance hasn't seen it at all. And I thought we would watch it together and discuss. I feel like it is my duty as the 2026 recipient of the Helen Keller Achievement Award. I feel like I gotta protect my girl. Okay, I am certain that there will be people who stumble upon this video because they are deep in the Helen Keller conspiracy theory rabbit hole. And now hear me say I'm a blind woman, and then I open the laptop. Just so we're all clear, this is a prop. Yes, it's a real laptop. There is nothing on the screen. My sighted fiance has a computer in the corner and he controls the video and he gives me visual descriptions when needed. I simply have this here to look at while I do reaction videos. Otherwise, I'm looking like this. Right down the barrel at you. And that's creepy and weird and uncomfy for both of us. So you're welcome. I do this for you, the sighted folk, to feel more comfy.
Was Helen Keller a fraud? I've wondered about that for over a decade, but I really hesitated to make this video because we live in an era that just loves knocking down historical figures. And I just don't think that's a good idea to dismiss amazing people because they held some outdated beliefs. I mean, you can pick any hero and somebody's out there with a takedown video on YouTube. But this one's different because the question about Helen Keller isn't about whether she was a bad person. It's about whether her accomplishments were even real. Whether the books, the essays, the political philosophy attributed to her actually came from her mind or someone else's. The elephant in the room is that the skeptics might have a point. I'm Ken LaCourte. I dig into topics like this that make some people uncomfortable, and I try to give you the fairest overview I can, and I did my best here. At 19 months old, an illness took her sight and her hearing. For the next 5 years, she lived in near total isolation, unable to communicate beyond a few crude gestures to her family. Then Anne Sullivan showed up, and the story that followed became one of the most famous in American history. Within weeks, Keller was learning words through fingerspelling into her palm.
Okay, so for those who are deafblind, they of course don't use ASL, BSL, whatever language, the way that just somebody who's deaf does. Because of course they can't see the signing. So they do it into the hand so that they can feel the signing. This is a common practice. This is a tool that deafblind people still use to this day. And then, of course, Braille, which she later went on to learn, is how blind people like me can read and write. Braille would have been the best way for her to read and write, and then using tactile sign.
By her teens, she was writing essays that drew serious literary attention, and, along with Anne Sullivan, she was world famous for her whole life. Keller became friends with Alexander Graham Bell, Edison, Ford, Einstein, Chaplin, Twain. She met 13 presidents. She graduated from Radcliffe, Harvard's women's college, with Sullivan at her side, interpreting lectures into her hand. She was the first known deafblind person to earn a bachelor's degree anywhere. Keller wrote 14 books and hundreds of essays and letters. She used her fame as a political activist, a suffragist, a socialist, a co-founder of the ACLU, a vocal opponent of World War I, and one of the earliest advocates for people with disabilities. By any measure, disabled or not, her resume is extraordinary. That all stemmed from her life story and her extraordinary writing. By age 10, her letters became remarkably sophisticated. She began using flowery, somewhat Victorian language that was very adult-like, including visual descriptions and metaphors that made her seem almost supernatural to the public. In a poem she wrote at 13, she described the golds, scarlets, and purples of an autumn landscape. Or she would write about how she would delight in the gorgeous colors of a sunset.
So the idea of using visual language as a blind person is not uncommon. She was describing the autumn colors because it's factual. Those are the colors that appear during the fall. I'm not sure what's confusing or controversial about that. I, as a blind person, say that I watched a movie. I saw this cute top at the mall. I'll see you later. Am I looking, seeing, or watching the way you as a sighted person are? No, but that doesn't mean I can't still use those words. I can accurately tell you the color of every clothing item in my closet. I can tell you that right now I'm wearing an icy, cool gelato lime colored top with a deep blue navy piping. It is a true navy, not a black navy. I can tell you that this cushion behind me is a yellow color, a light yellow, slightly mustard. These are a creamy white chair. The wall behind me is a blue gradient that leans slightly to the gray side. I have books behind me. There's a green one, a deep green, a yellow one, and a blue one. The lamp behind me is gold with white feathers. These are just facts that I've been told and I've remembered.
On screen, there's descriptions of things that Helen Keller has written about how she interprets color. So for instance, gray is, quote, like a soft shawl around the shoulders. Pink is like a baby's cheek or a soft southern breeze. So that's how she's interpreting color using tactile
visceral experiences. And that's extremely common. I have no visual memory. I was legally blind from birth and I lost the majority of my vision at 14. Despite what many people assume, I do not have visual memory. I cannot recall the color red, even though, yes, as a child, I saw the color red. Other people in the blind community have never seen color in their life. That does not mean that they or I cannot have a concept of color. Right, so for me, I think of red as fiery hot. I think of the taste of cinnamon. I think of the feeling of lipstick on my lips because I love a bold red lip. I think of the feeling of feeling powerful and strong and confident. When I think of pink, I think of the texture of a tutu, so that kind of crinoline chiffon texture. I think of the smell of bubble gum. These are the ways that I am able to conceptualize things. I think of feeling feminine, feminine energy and just feeling girly. There's lots of ways that I can take color and interpret it to be an emotion, to be a texture, to be a scent, to be a memory. That doesn't mean I can see them, but I'm also not excluded from experiencing them in my own way. Before we get back into watching, I do want to thank the sponsor of today's video because they make stuff like this possible, and that is Squarespace. I've been hosting my website on Squarespace for as long as I can remember at this point. But over the last year, we totally revamped it and gave it a much needed facelift. And we used one of their newest tools to help us. Design Intelligence uses cutting edge AI to help you build a beautiful, bespoke online presence for your business or brand that fits your unique needs. All you have to do is answer a few quick questions, and then it helps generate the website for you. Of course, you're able to tweak it from there, but it really makes it so simple and seamless. And once your website is up and running, you can make money immediately by selling content. You can sell anything from courses, videos, blogs, or memberships. And then you can set up recurring revenue by putting up a paywall. Just set the price, and then you decide whether you want a one-time payment or subscription. Even if you don't make content, there are still ways to make money on Squarespace by turning any lead into paying clients, using proposals, estimates, contracts, and even invoices all through your website. So if you're ready to get building your Squarespace site, head to squarespace.com/Molly Burke to get 10% off your purchase of a website or domain name. Okay, and now let's get back into things.
When critics challenged that visual language, Keller responded that a blind person should be allowed to use words whose meaning one can only guess from analogy.
Yes.
When a reviewer in The Nation called all her knowledge hearsay knowledge, Keller fired back that the bulk of the world's knowledge is in an imaginary construction. That's a sharp answer, but there was definitely an imitative quality that created a scandal that I'll get to in a minute. And it's important because very little about Helen Keller's story can actually be independently verified.
Okay, pause.
And the more close...
Another thing that I want to talk about when it comes to language, whether that's colors that we can't see or words like look and see, we're already othered enough. We are already constantly othered in society. We feel different enough, and people treat us that way. So for me, I'm well aware that I am living in your world, that you, the sighted people, are the standard, are the expectation. That's the world I live in. So I am not going to further make myself stand out as being different from the rest of society by entirely changing my language and or expecting you to do the same when you interact with me. That does not make me feel included. That does not make you want to include me. If I walked around saying I felt this cute top at the mall or I listened to this awesome movie, you're immediately in your brain turning the wheels about how weird that sounds, how different that sounds. What is that like? Instead of us being able to just carry on through a conversation. And at the end of the day, I see the world. I just don't see it with my eyes. I see the world with my ears. I see the world with my hands. That's how I see. The same way we use a word like hear. Oh, I heard about this crazy study that was done, but you read about it in an article. So sometimes we use words interchangeably. We don't use them in a literal sense. And that is what Helen Keller was doing.
So one thing I've always wondered was, why aren't there more Helen Kellers around? We have more resources and scientific knowledge than ever before, but we don't have hundreds of people deafblind from birth with her capabilities. So I did my best to research that, and the number of comparable people is small, in the handfuls, not the hundreds. And I should note that some of them lost their vision and hearing a bit later in life, so we're not necessarily comparing identical situations.
Pause. In disability, there is no identical situations. Straight up, it doesn't exist. Every single one of us is completely different. I know so many people with my disease. I know so many people with, actually not so many. I know multiple people with my same gene type of my same disease. I've not met a single person in the blind community who has the exact lived experience that I do, because disability lives on a spectrum. Two people with the exact same disease can present entirely differently. So we're never going to compare apples to apples with disability. It will always be apples to oranges. That is just the reality.
Often cited as a modern-day Helen Keller. She graduated from Harvard Law School, wrote a best-selling memoir, and became a prominent disability rights advocate. Her condition was progressive, beginning in early childhood. Robert Smith does. He lost his sight and most of his hearing to meningitis at age 5. He became the first deafblind person to earn a master's degree and publish poetry. Laura Bridgman actually preceded Keller by 50 years. She lost her sight, hearing, taste, and smell to scarlet fever at age 2. She mastered language, literature, and basic mathematics at Perkins. She proved the concept was possible before Helen Keller was born. But but her output never came close to Keller's in volume
Pause.
or in.
Sorry, it's just like funny hearing somebody be like, they prove the concept of a deafblind person functioning is possible. There's something about that wording that like is so weird and gross to me. Like, ooh, the concept of a deafblind person being able to be smart, they proved it could exist. Like, ew, I just hate that, even like the framing of that.
Marie Hurton is probably the most comparable case. Born completely deafblind in France in 1885, she had no language at all until age 10. She eventually learned to sign, read, and write, and she taught other deafblind girls in Braille. Absolutely remarkable, but she really never produced literary or political work of any sophistication.
Pause.
There's a consistent...
I'm sorry, like, why is there not a second Michael Jordan? Why is there not more Justin Biebers? Why, like, this is such a stupid argument. First off, you're talking about such a specific minority, right? Like, you're talking about a minority within a minority within a minority. And then you're like, but why aren't there more of them? Sure, all of these other deafblind people exist that are smart and are talented and are achieving great things, but none of them achieved quite as much as Helen Keller. Okay, there's been so many singers. Not all of them achieved what Michael Jackson achieved. The amount of people who tried to replicate the success of somebody like Justin Bieber, young, attractive, talented teen boys who could sing, and none of them became what Justin Bieber did. Cody Simpson, Austin, whatever. Like, there was all these people who tried, and none of them became what Justin did. Because that's the thing about being an extraordinary person, is extraordinary people aren't replicated. That's what makes them like the legend we look to. That's what makes them incredible and remarkable and go down in history, is that they're one of a kind. So it's like such a weird point.
So there have been tens of thousands of people deafblind from a young age. Why are we only talking about a handful? Part of that answer could be that the pool is smaller than it appears at first, because many of these children have disabilities beyond the sensory loss, cognitive or physical. The number who are deafblind with an otherwise intact brain, that's
Shut
a
up,
fraction
shut up,
of an
pause.
already...
Oh my God, what the hell? What the hell? The language, an otherwise intact brain, is actually one of the most volatile, despicable, disgusting phrases I have ever heard when it comes to talking about people with multiple disabilities or cognitive delays. That is actually shocking. Their brain being otherwise intact? Ew. Like, literally ew. The ableism is dripping. I can't stand it. Play.
And for most of human history, children born with these conditions, they just didn't survive long, or they weren't educated, or weren't documented. Still, it's a hard thing to get past. I mean, today, in first world countries, we have early screening, special education mandates, assistive technology, and dedicated deaf-blind programs. Today, we have resources that
Sorry,
Keller's
pause.
era...
This is, again, such a, like, ignorant, unaware take. Do services like those things, do technologies that support, does early screening exist? Yes, all of that does exist. Does that mean everybody gets access to it? Absolutely not. The same way not everybody had access to somebody the way Helen Keller had her aid. Like, access and opportunity, ability, all of these things differ circumstance to circumstance. I was raised in the suburbs of a major city, Toronto. So I had lots of access. That was a privilege. If I was born in a rural area, because my family were farmers, so they could not sell their ranch and move to the big city to get me more access, I would likely be extremely limited in the opportunities that I was given to access accommodations and education. I mean, there are blind people today in 2026 who do not get orientation and mobility lessons, which is how to use a white cane, for years. This is an issue. I've seen it on social media in England, in Canada, in the US, where they are on wait lists to get basic navigational independence back for years. So being like, oh, we have all this stuff now. It is not like it's just readily available and easy to obtain. There is often so many hoops to jump through. Even something like getting on disability support from the government, majority of people, if not everyone, gets denied their first time applying. even 2 or 3 times. Some people have to pay to have an independent person evaluate them and put a testimonial together on their behalf. Some have to hire a disability lawyer to get access. Like, this is not so cut and dry. It is not like all of this stuff just exists, so deafblind people get it now. That is so insane. And it's also like lacking the nuance of that beyond disability services and access to them. Everybody just has different capabilities as a human being. Remove the disability. Not all of us are people who can write New York Times bestsellers. Some people, have jobs where there are doctors and scientists and lawyers. Some people have jobs where they work at a factory. Like, everybody has different lifestyles, different opportunities, different access, different interests, hobbies, intellect, disability or not. Like, this is such a weird take. Okay, go.
Yet we still don't have a steady stream of comparable deafblind college graduates or published authors. In fact, the research treats basic
because of
communication
ableism, because
as
of discrimination, because of people like this. Like, we don't have a lot of disabled people achieving great things, not because disabled people are not capable of achieving great things, but because we have so many goddamn barriers in our way. One of the biggest ones being attitudinal, being the way society views us, the way society treats us. It actually is so frustrating for somebody who seems to be very smart. Like, he's very well spoken, he's well researched, he's put together a very compelling video for entertainment value, and yet he's missing so much nuance and context around the lived experience of disabled people in today's day and age. 80% of disabled people are unemployed in this country. Do you think that's because 80% of disabled people aren't capable of working? No, it's because the 2 million people who watched this video and are agreeing with him in the comment section, those are people that work in HR and are in charge of hiring and firing. These are people who we as disabled people interact with on a daily basis and have no idea they hold such ignorant beliefs and such small expectations of disabled people. Like, the bar is in hell. People expect so damn little of us that of course they're not giving us opportunities to show that we're capable, because they're immediately discounting us. They're immediately saying Helen Keller couldn't have possibly been that smart. Must have been somebody else. If that's what you genuinely believe and that's how you look at disabled people, then yeah, you're not going to give us the opportunities we deserve to prove you wrong. And the cycle freaking continues. This is a systemic problem.
Here's the problem. We can't verify much of Keller's thinking at all that didn't pass through Anne Sullivan first. Now, Keller infrequently communicated through others. She could type, and she did develop the ability to speak. Here's a bit of that.
It is not blindness or deafness that brings me my darkest hours. It is not blindness or deafness that bring me my darkest hours.
So for 33 years, every word Keller ever published went through Sullivan as the sole interpreter. Sullivan admitted she sometimes got the idea of what Keller was saying, but didn't always know the exact words. During the time Keller was with Sullivan and her husband, she published 3 books in her 20s. At the age of 33, she published Out of the Dark, a sustained work of socialist argument. Her writing across those 3 decades was literary, philosophically ambitious, and politically sharp. Then Sullivan died when Keller was 56, and replaced by Polly Thompson, a woman with no background in literature or politics. And the output changed immediately. Helen Keller's journal, published when Keller was 58, it was thinner and more emotional. Let Us Have Faith, published at age 60, it was a collection of short, inspirational essays with no political edge. Teacher, a tribute biography to Sullivan, took nearly 20 years to produce and is considered her weakest book.
When it comes to being a creative and being an artist of any kind, whether that's a musician, an author, a content creator, you have teams around you, right? And for example, like somebody like Taylor Swift, everybody talks about who's going to be the producer on this album because her style significantly changes depending on the team around her. The production partner completely helps craft what the sound and the narrative for those albums will be. And that's the case for every artist. It's why most artists find their team and work with their team for a long time. You've probably noticed if you've watched my videos for 12 years on here that the style of the editing has changed over the years because I've had different editors and they bring their own flair. I've completely pivoted my content style in the past year or so to doing more reaction style and commentary style videos. That's because I now am working with my fiance and he has a production background and he's able to empower me to be able to make content that I haven't had a team that empowered me to make before. That's just how it works. That doesn't mean that those weren't her words. It might, yes, like, do authors have editors? Yes. When I write a keynote speech, do I have my fiance, my dad, read it and give me feedback? Yes. Tell me, oh, like, I think this idea could be changed to this. That doesn't mean these aren't my ideas, my words, my voice, my opinions, my perspective. It just means I'm getting creative input from outside sources. And also, like, do you think anybody will be writing the same quality, like, later in their life? We don't know what else was going on. Not to mention, there's one-hit wonders. Like, literally, one-hit wonders exist all the time. An author or a musician or a director who produced a goddamn masterpiece and then they never produce quality work like that again. Like, there's people who live off royalties from like one song, one hit song for the rest of their career, and they try and they try and they try and they never break through that to that level again. Like, not every piece of art is created equally, even by the same artist. Sometimes you just got it, you know? Like, I look at myself when I was younger, when I was like 16, 17, or even like 20, 21, and I'm like, damn, she was freaking wise. Like, in a way that I don't feel like I am anymore. Because I've grown and I've changed and I've evolved, and I'm further away from the trauma I experienced that gave me so much wisdom. I've removed myself from that. And so I don't feel like I necessarily always have the same level of like depth that younger me had, which we think that's something you gain with age. But that's not necessarily true.
Some critics argued that the husband, John Macy, was
It's so funny. It's like my writing style has changed so much over the years. Like, when I read the speeches, the keynote speeches I wrote as a speaker at 20, I would never write that speech today, ever. Because I've read different books that inspired me to write in new ways and experiment with my voice and my tone. It just is. Like, that's just art.
The decline in ambition and sophistication, that doesn't track any medical event. It tracks the loss of Sullivan and her husband. Sullivan's own biographer wrote that as long as Sullivan lived...
It also might be that she just did enough. Like, my God, I've been doing advocacy work for 20 years. It's tiring. My goal is hopefully to retire in some capacity by like 45, because I don't think I can put this level of output out for the rest of my damn life. She's allowed to have said, I've done enough, and take a step back and not have the same level of ambition at 50 or 60 that she had at 20 or 25. I don't think most of us do as we age. Our energy levels go down. Our goals shift. She might have decided to focus her time and her energy on other things. Videos like this are so frustrating because it has millions of views, 16,000 comments. Overwhelmingly, these comments agree and are actually even more filled with ableist rhetoric than the video itself. The video itself was just kind of explaining the circumstance. The comments are riddled with ableism, and it's frustrating because it's continuing this rhetoric that we're incapable, and that it's hard to believe that disabled people can be capable. And when we as disabled people are raised in a world that thinks so little of us and believes so little is possible for us, it's very easy to internalize that. So, I don't know. That's how I feel by the end of watching these kinds of videos. I just feel frustrated and disheartened that these are still the conversations we have around disability. Instead of, how do we make a more equitable world for disabled people so that they can thrive, so that they can reach their full potential, so that there can be more Helen Kellers of the future? Helen Keller is a very complicated figure, but I don't think that arguing whether or not it was even possible for her to be intelligent and form her own opinions is a conversation we should be having. Anyways, that's about all I can manage for now on this because it just makes me feel a lot of feelings. So I'm gonna stop it there. I want to thank Squarespace for sponsoring this video, and until next time, you can click over here to see a reaction I recently made to the casting of Toph in Avatar: The Last Airbender on Netflix, or you can click over here to watch another video I recently made. Okay,